Thank you, Jared, and hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to be back at the Progress Summit and especially to be sharing this stage with Maeva Vilain.
Hello, everybody. Bonjour tout le monde. I hope you have your headsets because this session is going to be bilingual. Alors, aujourd'hui, on va parler de notre sujet, faire face aux crises d'aujourd'hui avec courage. Le courage de s'organiser, de bâtir des mouvements justes, d'une société équitable et inclusive.
This year's theme is bold. Daring to take on today's crises calls on all of us to believe that another world is possible. And it's not just possible, it's necessary. Each year, the Broadbent Institute brings together organizers, advocates, and everyday people who are doing that work on the ground, fighting for housing, justice, climate justice, worker power, and real democracy. For those who are not familiar with Progress Toronto, we're a nonprofit advocacy organization building a more democratic, just, and progressive city. Through campaigning, training, and our election work, we help residents and organizers take action on the issues that matter most, from housing and public services to racial and economic justice. We helped elect progressive leaders like Mayor Olivia Chow, and we've also just recently helped defeat far-right candidate Anthony Furey in the 2024 by-election. Our work empowers people to push for real change at City Hall and beyond. And as we co-host dispatches today, I'm reminded that the people you're about to hear from are making real impact. They're shaping a more equitable future for all of us and for their communities. These are our dispatches from the Frontlines.
Ce matin, nous avons l'honneur d'accueillir 4 femmes leaders qui, chacune à leur manière, participent à construire un avenir progressiste. Pour commencer, je vais vous présenter une collègue fantastique, la mairesse de Côte-des-Neiges-Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, Gracia Kasoki Katahwa. C'est la première femme noire à Montréal à occuper un poste de mairesse d'arrondissement. C'est une ancienne infirmière en santé mentale et une gestionnaire dans le réseau de la santé, et elle apporte une perspective très précieuse et une action de terrain fantastique pour la transformation sociale. Bonjour, Gracia.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Je vais faire la présentation en français ce matin. Alors, c'est vraiment un privilège pour moi d'être avec vous aujourd'hui au cœur d'un rassemblement qui est vraiment nécessaire pour qu'on puisse rassembler nos énergies et nos ressources entre forces progressistes au Canada. Je tiens à remercier tout d'abord l'Institut Broadbent pour cette invitation. C'est une première pour moi, alors je suis vraiment, vraiment heureuse d'être parmi vous ce matin. Oser s'attaquer aux crises aujourd'hui. Ce thème résonne profondément en moi, pas seulement comme élue, mais aussi comme femme, comme citoyenne et comme infirmière. Mon parcours personnel est tissé de solidarité et de résilience. En effet, je suis originaire de la République démocratique du Congo. Ma famille a immigré au Canada lorsque j'avais 3 ans. Ma famille est spécifiquement originaire de l'Est de la République démocratique du Congo. Pour les personnes qui suivaient l'actualité ou qui connaissaient un peu l'histoire de la région des Grands Lacs, vous comprenez que c'est une région qui est marquée depuis plusieurs décennies par des guerres qui sont créées pour être en mesure de mieux exploiter les ressources naturelles. Et les femmes, en fait, le viol des femmes qui est utilisé comme arme de guerre de façon systématique depuis des décennies. Alors, très tôt, j'ai réalisé les injustices qui pesaient sur les miens qui étaient restés là-bas. Et de là est venue ma volonté viscérale de contribuer au bien commun et de briser les barrières qui empêchent aux gens de vivre dignement, tant là-bas qu'ici. Cette conviction m'a d'abord menée vers le soin, parce que pendant plus de 10 ans, en effet, comme la collègue l'a dit, j'ai été infirmière, clinicienne au chevet, puis gestionnaire dans le réseau de la santé à Montréal. Au chevet de milliers de patients, jour après jour, j'ai vu la souffrance, la maladie, mais aussi la grande résilience humaine. Mais j'ai aussi vu autre chose. J'ai vu les causes profondes, les déterminants sociaux de la santé qui amenaient les gens à nos portes. Et de là, j'ai voulu trouver une façon de pouvoir avoir un impact encore plus concret sur la vie des gens. C'est-à-dire que dans le quotidien, J'étais heureuse d'être en mesure de soigner la population, de littéralement sauver des vies chaque jour, mais je me disais, mais comment est-ce qu'on peut faire pour avoir un impact encore plus grand sur la santé des populations? Donc, cette volonté de contribuer quotidiennement au bien-être des populations, c'est la raison pour laquelle je suis devenue infirmière, mais aussi c'est la raison pour laquelle j'ai fait le saut en politique municipale spécifiquement en 2021 pour devenir mairesse de l'arrondissement de Côte-des-Neiges-Notre-Dame-de-Grâce. Ce sont les mêmes raisons, en fait, parce que finalement, ce que je veux, c'est prendre soin de la population. Mais j'ai compris que pour vraiment prendre soin des gens, il faut agir avant l'hôpital. Il faut agir sur l'environnement de vie, sur l'urbanisme, sur les services de proximité. C'est là, au municipal, sur les lignes de front du quotidien que nous pouvons vraiment faire de la prévention et améliorer durablement la santé et le bien-être de nos communautés. Alors, aujourd'hui, quand on parle d'oser s'attaquer aux crises, pour moi, ça commence là. C'est-à-dire, oser voir les liens entre nos choix collectifs et la santé de nos concitoyens, concitoyennes, oser agir en prévention, et ça, même quand c'est difficile. Je veux vous illustrer, en fait, le quotidien de ce travail à travers quelques crises fondamentales que vous allez bien reconnaître. Et les crises dans un arrondissement comme le mien, qui est diversifié, qui est vibrant, mais aussi qui est marqué par les inégalités, on les vit de plein fouet. Je vais vous parler un peu de l'arrondissement de Côte-des-Neiges-Notre-Dame-de-Grâce à Montréal. Tout d'abord, c'est l'arrondissement le plus populeux de la ville de Montréal. Donc, on parle ici de 185 000 personnes. On parle de 135 langues parlées dans l'arrondissement. Donc, c'est aussi un des arrondissements les plus diversifiés du Canada. Ce sont des niveaux de vie différents. C'est-à-dire, j'ai à la fois des citoyens qui sont peut-être un peu plus privilégiés, qui m'ont dit, quand je cognais aux portes durant la dernière élection, vous savez, moi, je vis ici depuis 50 ans, en effet, dans des maisons qui valent des millions de dollars, mais c'est aussi des personnes qui vivent à l'intersection de plusieurs facteurs de vulnérabilité. Et tous ces gens vivent dans le même arrondissement. Et mon rôle comme mairesse, c'est de m'assurer que chacun et chacune d'entre eux, qui soient arrivés hier comme demandeurs d'asile, ou il y a 3 générations, que ces personnes se sentent chez eux, à la maison, dans cet arrondissement. Et dans ce contexte, la crise la plus visible, la plus déchirante, est certainement celle de l'itinérance et des vulnérabilités qui sont croissantes. Le manque criant de logements abordables, les failles dans le soutien en santé mentale et en toxicomanie, ça, c'est des conséquences d'années de sous-financement et peut-être une vision politique qui néglige les plus fragilisés. Tout ça jette les gens à la rue jour après jour dans nos quartiers. C'est l'échec d'un système, une injustice que nous voyons chaque jour, nous, sur le terrain. Et face à l'insuffisance des réponses provinciales et fédérales, nous, au municipal, on ose agir avec les moyens qu'on a, c'est-à-dire les taxes foncières municipales. Alors, on se bat pour plus de logements hors marché. On a d'ailleurs réussi récemment dans mon arrondissement à acquérir avec plus de 100 millions de dollars 700 logements pour les soustraire à la spéculation immobilière. C'est 700 logements dans un de nos quartiers les plus fragilisés, où les personnes avaient un stress à chaque année, en fait, qu'un propriétaire, que j'ose dire véreux, augmente leur loyer sans considération de leurs moyens. Aujourd'hui, ces personnes, leurs propriétaires, c'est la Ville de Montréal. Et c'est un soulagement important pour 700 ménages dans Côte-des-Neiges. Ce qu'on fait aussi pour faire face à cette crise, c'est qu'on crée des unités modulaires d'urgence pour les personnes à risque de se retrouver à la rue. On finance les organismes communautaires qui défendent les locataires. On déploie des équipes comme l'équipe mobile de médiation d'intervention sociale à Montréal pour soutenir les personnes vulnérables dans nos rues et aider à la cohabitation sociale loin des forces policières. Et tout ça, c'est parce que c'est notre devoir de prendre soin, même quand les ressources manquent. L'autre crise qui frappe à nos portes, littéralement, ce sont les changements climatiques. Les inondations en répétition dans les sous-sols des gens de Côte-des-Neiges, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, en plein cœur de Montréal, il n'y a aucun cours d'eau autour. L'air vicié par les feux de forêt qui viennent du nord, les îlots de chaleur urbains, et tout ça, c'est plus théorique. C'est le quotidien de nos citoyens. Alors, on ose, et j'insiste, on ose adapter notre ville. On investit dans les parcs éponges, dans les rues éponges, dans des infrastructures vertes. On dépense des milliards de dollars pour transformer notre ville. On verdit massivement nos quartiers pour créer des îlots de fraîcheur. On adopte des règlements d'urbanisme plus stricts dans les zones en cuvette, justement. Et on porte un plan climat qui est ambitieux. En fait, on ose regarder la réalité en face et on prépare l'avenir. Mais ces transformations qui sont nécessaires, et on se comprend ici par rapport à ça, notamment pour le climat et la mobilité, bien, ça ne se fait pas sans heurts. Elles bousculent les habitudes des citoyens, elles génèrent des oppositions, et c'est là que le danger nous guette. Parce que les discours populistes, souvent portés par une certaine droite, exploitent ces frustrations apportées par les changements. Ils montent les citoyens les uns contre les autres, accusent les politiques progressistes d'être antidémocratiques. Simultanément, d'autres discours identitaires cherchent à diviser en désignant les immigrants comme responsables de tous les maux. Dans mon arrondissement, où cohabitent tant de cultures différentes, c'est un poison qui est insidieux, contre lequel on s'attelle à lutter sans relâche. Alors, oser ici, c'est d'abord persévérer. Et ce n'est pas un petit mot. Chaque jour, on persévère sur nos objectifs de transition écologique et sociale, tout en communiquant, évidemment, puis en expliquant et en étant transparent envers les citoyens. Et ça, c'est refuser la polarisation. Et surtout, c'est promouvoir activement l'inclusion. Parce qu'on s'assure aussi la diversité de nos équipes d'arrondissement et à la ville. On investit dans la culture comme un vecteur de rencontre dans les quartiers. On a d'ailleurs bonifié le financement de plusieurs organismes culturels et artistes diversifiés à travers la ville. Ça demande aussi d'être présent sur le terrain dans toutes les communautés, non pas pour les utiliser à chaque élection, mais pour être présent et comprendre comment eux vivent la ville et être en mesure d'apporter les transformations qui nous permettent d'améliorer leur quotidien. Alors tout ça, c'est oser affirmer une société qui est ouverte et qui est solidaire. La troisième crise est celle de l'économie. Parce que les crises sociales, climatiques, identitaires, elles se déploient aujourd'hui dans un contexte économique qui est particulièrement difficile, on le sait tous. Oui, l'inflation, le coût exorbitant du logement, l'incertitude économique amenée par Trump pèse lourdement sur les Montréalaises et les Montréalais. Et vous savez, on entend parfois des voix qui s'élèvent pour dire c'est pas le moment, en fait, pour les politiques progressistes en ce moment. Il faut couper. On ne peut pas se permettre d'investir dans le social ou l'écologie maintenant. Et moi, je crois que c'est exactement le contraire qu'il faut faire. C'est précisément parce que les temps sont durs qu'une vision progressiste est absolument essentielle. Les politiques économiques de droite, nous le savons, frappent toujours les mêmes personnes, c'est-à-dire les plus vulnérables, les services publics dont ils dépendent notamment. Elles creusent les inégalités et fragilisent notre économie à long terme. Alors, oser aujourd'hui, c'est refuser ces politiques et ces réflexes de droite. C'est démontrer que nos actions pour le logement abordable, comme sortir 700 logements du marché spéculatif, ce sont des mesures anti-crise qui soulagent directement le portefeuille et le quotidien des familles. C'est prouver qu'investir dans le transport collectif et dans les pistes cyclables réduit les dépenses des ménages. C'est soutenir notre économie locale, nos commerces de proximité, nos entreprises d'économie sociale pour que la richesse reste et circule ici. Notre approche progressiste, ce n'est pas une dépense, c'est un investissement dans la résilience collective. C'est la meilleure stratégie pour aider nos concitoyens à traverser la tempête, tout en bâtissant une ville qui est plus juste et plus durable pour l'avenir. Ça demande une gestion qui est rigoureuse, certes, mais aussi une défense acharnée de nos services et une solidarité sans faille. Alors, ces dépêches de notre ligne de front montréalaise, elles le montrent. Oui, la polycrise, elle est complexe, mais l'action locale, menée dans des valeurs progressistes, elle offre des solutions qui sont concrètes et porteuses d'espoir. Les villes sont des laboratoires extraordinaires et les villes sont les derniers remparts du progressisme. Mais notre action locale, aussi déterminée soit-elle, elle ne suffit pas. Elle doit s'inscrire dans un mouvement plus large, porté par vous toutes et tous qui êtes ici, par un changement qui est systémique. Alors, on a besoin de politiques provinciales et fédérales à la hauteur des enjeux, qui reconnaissent que soutenir les villes, c'est soutenir directement les citoyens face à la crise économique et climatique. On a besoin de cette solidarité. Face à l'ampleur de la tâche, et ici, dans cette maison qui porte son nom, rappelons les mots d'Ed Broadbent lui-même. Il nous a rappelé que l'optimisme est un acte politique. Ceux qui profitent du statu quo sont parfaitement heureux de nous laisser croire que rien ne peut s'améliorer. Alors cet optimisme politique, ce refus du cynisme, c'est exactement ce dont on a besoin aujourd'hui. C'est le carburant de notre audace. Mon parcours de l'hôpital à l'hôtel de ville m'a appris que prendre soin des gens et oser changer les systèmes qui les rendent malades ou vulnérables, y compris économiquement, ce sont les deux faces d'une même médaille, en fait. C'est le cœur de l'engagement progressiste. Alors oui, osons incarner un optimisme politique. Osons affronter ces crises avec courage, avec intelligence et surtout tous ensemble, pour bâtir ici, à Montréal et partout au Canada, des communautés plus justes, plus vertes, économiquement résilientes et profondément humaines. Merci.
Wow, ça commence bien la journée, hein? It starts well today, so thank you very much, Gracia. You show what it is to have leadership and to have braveness and to act. I can see her on the ground and it moves in Côte-des-Neiges-Notre-Dame-de-Grâce. Think about her next time you go there. Now we are transporting ourselves to Toronto, receiving Erin Mackey. She's the current research and campus strategy co-lead at Regeneration and a recent grad from University of Toronto. She co-founded Climate Justice of University of Toronto, and she led the charge that pushed the School of Environment to cut ties with the fossil fuel industry, making it the first climate institution in North America to do so. Erin's work is all about building power and mobilizing communities to fight for a more just and sustainable future. Welcome to Erin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Mackey. I'm glad to be with all of you this morning and hear from so many amazing organizers and folks fighting for so many different issues. I want to spend my time with you this morning telling you a little bit about my story and why I got involved in climate justice organizing, and tell you more broadly the story of climate justice organizers, youth climate justice organizers across so-called Canada and North America. I was originally born in Boston, Massachusetts, on the traditional land of the Musqueam, the Nipmuc, and the Pawtucket people. And I am, unfortunately, a dual US and Canadian citizen. And I moved to Toronto for university to attend the University of Toronto. And I was at the climate strike in Toronto, as many other youth were at the time, and I was invigorated by that moment. I was immensely inspired by the thousands and thousands of people that were in the streets fighting for a better world, fighting for a better planet, a livable future. And there was so much momentum and energy, and I felt that in my heart. And I wanted to bring that to campus, and then COVID hit, and we moved all of our classes online. And, so many people were impacted by COVID in so many different ways, but one of them was organizing on campus kind of ground to a complete halt, right? It was very, very difficult to find community on Zoom, let alone organize and build power together. And I remember I attended a meeting of this group called LEAP U of T, which was the main group organizing for fossil fuel divestment at the time. And there was 7 folks who were there, 5 of whom were graduating, and they were really burnt out, and they were exhausted against fighting an administration, the University of Toronto, that had continued to refuse to divest from fossil fuels. And me and my friend Leo were sitting around, and we were so inspired by all the work that these folks had done, we said, we cannot let this group die. And so we decided to rebrand and relaunch the group under a new name, Climate Justice U of T, and continue to fight for fossil fuel divestment. And in 2021, the University of Toronto did what at some previously believed to be impossible. They committed to divesting from fossil fuels. Now I cannot stand before you and take credit for that win. That win is the work of hundreds of student organizers for 10 plus years at the university, hundreds of student organizers across so-called Canada and North America who had been pushing for those demands. But again, what felt impossible was no longer impossible. The University of Toronto committed to divestment from fossil fuels, as well as many other universities around the world. And it was in that moment, celebrating that win, which is a really, really big win, we started to think about well, what else is the university investing in, right? You know, they are no longer investing their funds in fossil fuels, which they deem to be, you know, harming the planet and their students' futures, but what other things are they invested in? And I realized quite quickly that the university, like many universities across so-called Canada and the United States, are invested in weapons manufacturing and, you know, companies that are complicit in genocides around the world. And so in my last year of involved in organizing around Palestine and organizing to push the University of Toronto to divest from fossil fuels, but also divest from weapons manufacturing companies complicit in genocide. And so it's through that story and that process, organizing around fossil fuel divestment, organizing around weapons divestment, that, you know, was the experience and story of many, many youth climate organizers across Canada and North America. Because as climate justice organizers, we realize intricately that the climate crisis is a crisis of multiple things. It's a crisis of settler colonialism, of genocide, of displacement of indigenous peoples around the world, extraction, exploitation, and that all of those things are deeply intertwined and interconnected, and that there can be no climate justice without a free Palestine, that there can be no climate justice without a free Congo or Sudan, that there can be no climate justice without, you know, affordable housing and, you know, access to quality food, education, you know, labor rights, and that all of these things are deeply, deeply interconnected. And so it's through that story and that process that I speak with all of you who are organizing across many, many different issues. And we arrive in a moment where many of those issues are under attack from the far right. You know, we are witnessing the rise of, or albeit already here, authoritarianism, fascism in the United States. We're witnessing that here in Canada. You know, there are trans people that are under attack. There are Palestinian organizers who are under attack and facing arrest, deportation. You know, we are in a crisis on multiple fronts in multiple ways. And so, as progressive organizers, it is up to us to band together to build networks of mutual defense, mutual solidarity, and rise to this moment and rise to this challenge. Because ultimately, in my view, that is the only way that we have a chance of winning. That is the only way we have a chance of building power, of building a better and just livable world for everyone. Because that's what we want, right? We all want those things, and it's important for us to do that work. But it requires trust. You know, we know historically that the climate justice movement has done a pretty poor job of building that trust and working across movements and breaking those silos and showing up, you know, for land defense or for pipelines and all these things. And there are pockets and, you know, moments where people have done so, but as a collective, we need to do a much better job. And so I'm continually inspired by many folks in this room who are doing that work, building those trusts, building those mutual defense networks. And I tend to be a cautiously optimistic person, which in this moment feels quite hard, but I still am, because I look out across at all of you, and I believe that a different world is possible. I know it's possible, you know, because I have seen it, and I'm sure that I will see it within my lifetime. So thank you all, and I will leave you with that.
Thank you, Erin, for that powerful reminder of what's possible when students organize and refuse to stay silent in the face of corporate power. From campus to community, that same spirit of resistance is showing up across the country. And our next dispatch is from another organizer in my home city of Toronto. Sharlene Henry is a tenant organizer with the York South Weston Tenants Union, and she knows firsthand how the housing crisis is impacting working people, and she's been organizing building by building to demand rent control, safe living conditions, and dignity for tenants. This is what it means to take on today's crises, not with fear, but with determination and community power. Welcome, Sharlene.
Good morning. How's everyone feeling today? So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I ended up on a 16-month rent strike and won. My name's Sharlene Henry. I'm a mom, a daughter, a wife, an auto worker, a member of Unifor Local 1285, and most importantly, I'm part of the York South Weston Tenant Union. I am currently co-chair. So I've been living in the building I live in for about 20 years now, and we were under attack. Our landlord decided that they're going to do some repairs and do these things that everyone heard called AGIs, What is an AGI? It's an above guideline increase. It's an increase in Ontario that landlords could do if they do capital repairs on a building. It's above the guideline that the government allows. And for our building, in the matter of 10 years, my son was 10 years old, we had 8 go through. It affected everyone in our building in a different way. We have people living there that are new to Canada, people who have lived there for many years, 30 plus years, 40 years, including myself who's lived there for a couple decades, and people who live there for 3 or 4 or 5 years. These rent increases would increase people's rent about $150 or $100 a month each year, and would be multiple increases every single year and bleed into one another. Besides the fact that the Landlord-Tenant Board is backed up, and to fight this, it takes forever, and landlords win and tenants don't, we decided that we need to take back our power. We need to fight the system that keeps us in a constant state of unsecure housing. As we all probably agree with in this room, like myself, housing is a human right. Everyone deserves a place that's clean, free from repairs, and is affordable to live in. So many of my neighbors decided that we were going to fight back against our landlord. And in this process, we did many things. We did phone zaps. We called CEOs. We called our MPs. We reached out to our city councillor. We reached out to our Minister of Housing, who at the time was our York South-Weston parliamentary member. No one got back to us. No one listened. We did petitions. We organized building after building, including my own, to fight against these increases that were keeping people out of housing that was secure. And over the years, we got frustrated and more frustrated. We had some wins. We won back percentages off on these AGIs, but it wasn't enough. Specifically in my building, our landlord didn't want to give us back money that we were deserved, that we won back. So in June 1st, 2023, we officially went on a rent strike. In a 400-unit building, 200 brave people decided I'm going to hold back my rent. When I say a rent strike, people do, what's a rent strike? Well, we knew we were okay. We knew that we wouldn't be taken to court for months because, as I said, the system is backed up, 8 months. So we knew we had a few months to try to negotiate with the landlord. And that was the goal, to negotiate for no more above guideline increases, to negotiate all the repairs that were needed in the building, and to make sure that people had security in their housing. Our landlord didn't want to negotiate with us. So the rent strike went on. It went on for months and months. We door knocked every week to make sure people were okay and still withholding their rent and saving it. We were threatened. The police were called on us. They hired security to keep people who lived in a building to door knock, stop door knocking. That's how bad it got. It was tense. Every day, me and my neighbors still turned our key and went to our homes after a day of work or whatever it is we do in our lives. For me, it became really stressful. I had many intimate conversations with my neighbors about how important it was to win this, how much it meant to have affordable housing, how much it meant to live in the neighborhood that we live in, that we love. York South-Weston is an old community in Toronto, full of many different cultures, many different people from different places in the world. But the beauty of the neighborhood is that we are diverse, that we are strong. And as someone who has a family, my family loves our neighborhood. During this time, I learned a lot. My union supported me 150%. Unions in general supported us 150%. People came out to our rallies, people phoned zapped, people called the members of parliament. People just came out and supported us 100%. This little pocket in a big city with 3 million people, people supported us. So along this journey, I learned that there's always solidarity when you fight back. I've also learned that without housing, people are not okay. So we have to keep fighting and make sure that we vote properly in this election so that housing is always at the top of the list with all the many issues we have here in Canada. Thank you, and solidarity.
What an incredible story. Thank you, Sharlene. Your work reminds us that courage, tenacity, and clarity are powerful tools. For our last dispatch, I'm thrilled to introduce Avreet Jagdev. You got some fans out here. A student organizer at the University of Toronto and a graduate of the Broadbent Institute's Emerging Leaders Program. She's part of the generation pushing for systemic change on campuses, in the streets, and across the country. Whether it's affordability, reproductive rights, or student rights, Avreet is organizing for real solutions, not status quo politics. Welcome, Avreet.
Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. Happy E18 to everyone who celebrates. My name is Avreet Jagdev. I use she, her pronouns. I'm currently the Vice President of Public and University Affairs at the University of Toronto Students' Union. We're the second largest student union in Canada, where we represent over 40,000 undergraduate students. I also do want to give a quick shout out to the Emerging Leaders Program. It's an incredible program. Congrats to this year's Emerging Leaders. My role at the UTSU involves directing the advocacy of our union. My term is coming to an end, and what a year it has been. Over the past year, we've seen life get harder for all of us, not just for students. The affordability crisis has spiked. Food insecurity is on the rise, and housing is hard to obtain. Trump was elected south of the border, and a genocide is being conducted in Palestine. The far right is rising. They're organized, they are well-funded, and they are tapping into our widespread fear and as well as misinformation. We are seeing all of these issues and events manifest and spill over onto our campuses, from the criminalization and pushback against student activism, such as the encampments over the summer, to a rise in academic censorship and a spike in student reliance on programs like free food programming and transit fare banks. It's clear that students are feeling it. And it's also clear that we are in a deeply scary time. We're also in an important time. We're on the brink of a federal election where we have the opportunity to elect principled and compassionate and kind leaders, which I hope we will do. But important change happens between and outside of electoral politics. And even if things go our way during this election cycle, which I hope that they will, this election won't save us, especially those of us who exist at the margins. Acknowledging that can feel overwhelming. I know I am overwhelmed right now. And in times like this, when the world feels too big and too scary and everything just kind of sucks, I remind myself of how I got started in activism in the first place. I was in my first year of university, on my way to one of my very first classes, when I saw a group of anti-abortion protesters. I'm sure many of us have seen them before. They were holding very large, graphically violent signs that are extremely unavoidable. It's uncomfortable for anyone, especially for those of us who have a uterus. So I started rushing away, but I noticed a girl who had been walking alongside me, who had stopped completely in her tracks. I didn't know who she was, but it was clear to me in that moment that she needed somebody. So I went up to her, I introduced myself, I offered to walk her to class, and during our short walk, I learned about her experience with an abortion and how deeply harmful this imagery was. From there, we mobilized a group of students, now a recognized group on campus called Students for Choice. And over the past 3 years, when anti-abortion protesters show up on our campus, you can bet that we'll show up too. We block their signs with signs of our own. And sometimes they catch us off guard. They show up when no one's really expecting it. You're studying for a midterm in the library and you get a text. So you still show up. I have taken off my own hoodie to try to cover their signs, used random cardboard I found on the sidewalk and washed my hands after, and covered it with my own body, standing directly in front of it so that people walking on campus don't have to be exposed to such violent imagery on their way to class. In this terrifying time, where the far right is rising and it feels like our rights are on the line, I believe that it is these acts of kindness and resistance and community that are going to sustain us. And I also want to emphasize that we cannot take any of what we have for granted. Almost 3 years ago, Roe was overturned in the United States. It caught many of us by surprise. And in Canada, we tend to think that abortion is a settled issue, but it is not. In our country, there exist more crisis pregnancy centers, which are fake healthcare clinics established by anti-abortion groups that shame and scare people away from abortion, than actual clinics where you can access an abortion. And it's not just the far right that are making this happen and allowing this to take place. It's also the centrists like Mr. Mark Carney, who included no minister for women and gender equality in his cabinet. In a country where if I walk into a random clinic that claims to offer services for pregnant people, and the chance is higher that I will be shamed into opting out of an abortion, than actually provided with unbiased healthcare? Trust me, we need a minister for women and gender equality. We are in a crucial moment, and we cannot afford to miss it. To me, meeting this moment that we're in means daring to take on today's crises in whatever ways you can. And a lot of times, to me, it means caring. It means looking out for one another, for your neighbors, your colleagues, your peers, your friends, strangers on the street. We all know that things are not going to be getting better overnight, but we must show up in community for one another. Resistance should, and it often does, begin and end with care and community. It is what will sustain us, and it is what will keep us going during these dark times. And eventually, it will become what will propel us into a future that is brighter and safer and kinder for us all. Thank you.